Welcome to this podcast episode in which we'll be looking at the topic of meaningful business. My name is Dr. Alex Altersky from the School for Business and Society at the University of York. A warm welcome to my guest, Ryan Atkins, co-founder of Supercycle. And also, I must add, for the first time on the podcast, we have another guest and his dog, Major. Welcome, Major. Major's looking very chilled there in the corner. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks very much for joining us today. So, firstly, could you tell me a little bit about what you do, what your business is, and your journey to doing it, please?
Yeah, of course. So, Supercycle really exists to help businesses make as much money as possible from each product that they manufacture. So we mainly service retail and e-commerce businesses, and we allow them to implement circular business models. So that could be rental business models, could be products as a service business models, it could be trade-in and resale, anything to do with selling the same product more than once.
Yeah, that's really interesting because obviously there's a lot of talk around fast fashion at the moment and how kind of bad it can be for the environment and everything and all of this. So really interesting. So are there any sort of notable products or or brands that you're working with that are kind of show an example of how this works?
We have a really, really broad mix. So baby and child is definitely a key category. You know, I want a really good pram. Maybe I want one with the motors that drives up the hill for me.
Yeah.
£2,000 or £3,000 for a pram is quite expensive, especially when the child doesn't stay outside for very long. So we're seeing, prams go out on subscription models, and then, when the child no longer fits in the pram, you send it back, they respray the frame, put new wheels on it, and then it goes out on subscription to the next customer, and it's essentially arriving as new to each customer. So that could be our pram manufacturers. Then we have, clothing brands. So, we're working with Gore-Tex, for example, where you can subscribe to a children's jacket, and then as they get bigger and as the seasons change, you just keep swapping the jacket out. So it's like a library of clothing. We're saying library of toys, Lego sets. The joy of building Lego is building Helm's Deep, and then once I build Helm's Deep, I kind of want to build the Tower of Orthanc. But the minute I need to keep buying each set and then building them once, it's kind of crazy. So again, library of Lego situation. It's £20 a month. I get 2 Lego sets, and then I just keep swapping the Lego sets out each time I want to build something new. We have some really interesting ones. I mean, if we were to go into incredibly niche, we have a lady in the US, and the realization that she came to was, I think 60% of women in America regret the size of breast augmentation that they get. Wow. They regret the size that they went for.
Okay.
And what she's essentially doing is kind of, I guess, renting out different size, sort of not implants, but in between the one. So you can live as different sizes for a period of time. Go for a run as an E cup, go do the school run as a D cup. Find what you feel comfortable with and what fits into your life, and then commit to the operation. So it can go to incredibly niche with these entrepreneurs. Wow. But there's also a lot of boring businesses, wheelchair rental businesses, medical device rental businesses. And then the thing that we're moving into increasingly now is working directly with brands where their primary business is selling products. They're selling the Balstaff jacket, for example. But what we allow you to do is, as you're purchasing the new Balstaff jacket, you can trade in your previous Barber jacket, for example, or your previous Balstaff jacket, and you get a discount against the new thing or trading in the previous thing. Very similar to the Apple model of, I want the iPhone 15, I'm going to discount and give you my iPhone 14 back.
That's really interesting, and I wish all of this had been around when my daughter was a baby. I think we paid a lot of money for a Bugaboo pram, which was lovely, but obviously didn't last very long, and she loved Lego, and I dread to think how much I spent on Lego over the years. And in the end, I just gave it all away, if that makes sense, So, no, it's absolutely fantastic. But then linking over to ideas around meaningful business. I mean, this podcast is linked to the Meaningful Business Network and these ideas around sort of doing business that helps society or people or the environment. So if we go into these ideas around meaningful business, what does it mean for you, and how is it connected potentially to what you do in Supercycle?
Yeah, okay. So I adore business and I adore entrepreneurship. I think the social mobility enabled by entrepreneurship. I grew up in Acomb, and every bonfire night, the fence off my garden was stolen to put on the communal bonfire. And obviously, I wanted to kind of, maybe live a better life than that as I got older. Maybe that's not the life that perhaps I want to bring my own children into. So entrepreneurship is kind of that social mobility piece for me. Also, I think generally small businesses can afford to be a lot more idealistic than big business. So the more small business we have, the more people we have driving change in the world through more altruistic pursuits, perhaps, than just big tech or kind of multinationals kind of defining how society works. So more small business, more entrepreneurship is definitely really important, to me. And one of the things that was kind of very, very apparent to me is when I first started that kind of entrepreneurial journey, the options available to me were sell my time. It's the only thing that I had which I could sell without either having to raise investment to manufacture a product or kind of build something out. So like the only real path for me was I need to learn a skill and then I need to sell my time. That's kind of how I started out, web design and logo design and those sorts of things. And what I really like about circular business models is it can be very iterative. It's a new path to new entrepreneurs. Circular business models have historically been unprofitable. Look at someone like Rent the Runway, for example. Wonderful business, incredible revenue, but very little profit and an enormous amount of investment required to get it off the ground. Whereas if we take away all of the technology costs or the operational headache of starting those circular businesses, it means anyone can start. You can start small. I mean, we have businesses that entrepreneurs which are starting small businesses. They buy 10 sets of Lego or 3 sets of Lego that they previously had, and then they start a business from that. Or this gets incredibly niche. Home birthing pools. Some people are giving birth at home. I don't need to own a home birthing pool. I'm going to buy one home birthing pool, and then I'm going to start renting out in my local area. Then I'm going to buy a second and a third and a fourth. So it's a new path to entrepreneurship that isn't just selling your time. And it's a path that requires much less capital, because you buy one thing of value and then you sell it multiple times, and then as revenue increases, you buy 2 things of value and start selling those multiple times. So part of it is that. The second part of it for me in particular is circular business models. So previously to that, I built an agency up and we were helping some of the biggest brands run their e-commerce businesses. But we did get to a point where the businesses had to grow. Like, my staff weren't paying more next year than this year. Like, inflation. So I have to grow. If I brought shareholders on, I do need to deliver a return to those shareholders. The only way these businesses could grow was manufacture more things, sell more things. And it does edge you towards that kind of sharp edge of capitalism. If my only path to growth is make more stuff, I need to make more stuff. I need to convince you that what you bought last year isn't good enough anymore, and you need a new version. So whilst I love entrepreneurship, it was it's getting right towards kind of the sharp edges of capitalism. Whereas circular business models, actually, if I can capture more value from the things I create over a long period, I can grow, but less manufacturing can happen because of it. So part of the observation was this, sharp edges of capitalism. The second part was with a lot of these businesses, their biggest competitor was becoming their own customers. Like, their own customers selling their products to each other on Vinted.
Oh, I see.
eBay, on Depop. So this is kind of a complicated situation. Like my customers are now my competitors. Like if you look at Peloton, for example, Peloton's biggest competitor is last year's customers selling the products on Facebook Marketplace. Like they compete more with their own products in the second-hand market than they do with the next brand of smart bicycles. So meaningful business for me is kind of two things: like more entrepreneurship, more small businesses, but also the businesses that we create. Can we grow and minimize our environmental impact as part of that? And if we can make those two things compatible, it can't be, we can't not have growth in the pursuit of sustainability, but how can we make growth more sustainable, as opposed to how do we trade off growth for sustainability? Like the two things have to be compatible at the same time, and that really is what the promise of circularity and circular business models is.
That's really interesting. I mean, the things you're saying about entrepreneurship can be kind of like an emancipatory type force, really, where people can decide to take their lives in a certain direction, and it might not be about profit or money. It might be about that they love doing something, if that makes sense, and obviously they can live their lives and afford to live and support their families with it. And it's really interesting what you're saying about business models, really. I mean, for me, I think like one of the classic ones, which we find in all the business textbooks and everything, is Patagonia. And obviously it's expensive, isn't it? But then there's all this stuff about, you can take it back and get it remade and all of this. And kind of, I think what you're talking about is kind of taking this to many different brands and products into the mass market. So it's really, really interesting. So, I mean, going forward, what needs to happen? Maybe at a societal level or an economic sort of in the economy to sort of help businesses thrive in this way, linked to meaningful business. What needs to happen going forward? Obviously, we've got people like you that are trailblazers that are bringing ways to help businesses in this way. What else needs to happen going forward?
I mean, I think it's happening, and it's happening at pace. So the change is already upon us, and really what you see at the moment is it's primarily happening through disruption. It's happening because Vinted is growing at exponential rates. It's happening because eBay is growing at exponential rates. So that's applying increasing pressure to businesses. The only problem is that while there's this growth in demand for non-new products, or this demand for access instead of ownership, or for this demand from the customer for a more sustainable option, the brands themselves aren't necessarily the ones capturing that demand, which then leaves them in the same position. The only way I grow is make more things. So all it's really doing is taking the demand that already exists and that growing demand, and just moving it to the P&Ls of the people that are. I hesitate to use the phrase, but like, if you're just looking through a sustainability lens, where's the damage being happened? It's happening from extracting resources and creating more stuff, probably stuff that we don't need. Like if you look at the your percentages of how many clothes we're producing, and actually clothes how many, God knows how many more generations with just the clothes that already exist without needing to manufacture new ones. So if we kind of say from an environmental perspective, that's where the problem is. Well, actually, how do we give them incentive to manufacture less? And the only way we do that is give them a path to growth that doesn't solely depend on new manufacturing.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I mean, I read something today about Amazon Kindle, and some old models are not being supported. These are models that stopped being made in sort of 2012, 2013. And so this means that the next time that they try to update them, they're going to brick them. And it's going to create something like 500 tons of e-waste, if that makes sense. But also you can understand the problem with, these are all devices that, it's hard to keep the security up and all of this. So I think it's really interesting what you're saying about that path to growth without actually having to make more stuff, really. So in terms of Supercycle, what are your plans going forward then? What's your plans for the next sort of years and for the Supercycle?
Yeah, so I kind of started my career really right at the beginning of e-commerce. For most businesses, e-commerce was it's an experiment for a lot of these businesses. And a lot of my career has been building agencies and providing services to those businesses to have to transition them to e-commerce and then help them grow their e-commerce presence. And now, if we look at e-commerce, it's most businesses' primary sales channel, if not their only sales channel. That same thing is going to happen for circular business models. Like every single business is going to be running some form of circular business model as part of what they do, whether that's take back, whether it's trade-in, whether it's rental, whether it's products or service, whether it's resale, whether it's repair and remanufacture. I think most businesses will have a combination of these, but every business will be running at least one or two of them. In the same way that there are scarce number of businesses now that are operating e-commerce in some form.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say so far is running circular business models has been less profitable. There's higher operational costs. There's been high technology costs. And for businesses like for businesses where they've tried to build circular first businesses, they've had a high cost of customer acquisition because they've had to educate customers about, well, you don't need to buy the thing, you can rent the thing instead. Google Shopping's not made for rental pricing. There's lots of challenges with kind of promoting it. But all of those things are changing now. The brands already have the traffic, so the cost of customer acquisition is going to zero. We're essentially taking the cost of technology to near zero. The operational costs, especially in the age of AI and robotics and grading and all that kind of stuff, that's rapidly decreasing. And then you have the cost of inventory, manufacturing the products in the first place. But in circular business models, the majority of the time, the inventory is coming back to you and doesn't have a direct cost. If it's a trade-in, I receive the product back from a customer, I give them store credit to buy something new, but I've got a new sale out of it. So actually, I've received the product back. So essentially what I've given as a discount against a new sale. So I've acquired the stock, but I'm not having to spend any money to receive it. I've got a sale for receiving it. Now I have the business. Now I can put it back to product. So whilst there's a slight increase in cost of operations, it's a bit more expensive than just receiving it in a plastic bag, putting it on a shelf, and then when it's receiving an order for it, pick and pack it. There's higher operational costs, but you're sort of making that back in the sense that you then don't have the cost of manufacturing the product in the first place. So the plan for Supercycle is really to do what Shopify has done. Shopify made e-commerce accessible to all, profitable to launch from day one, and then profitable to launch at scale all the way to public companies. The same thing is now true for circular business models. Supercycle makes it profitable to launch circular business models on day one, and it makes it profitable to scale it to public companies.
Fantastic. No, really, really interesting. You mentioned customer demand as well. So, I mean, is it your view that this is going to be demanded more and more then? This is going to be something really important that customers are going to be interested in, or is this already happening?
Well, I think all you have to do is kind of look at what's happened with homes, what's happened with cars. Usually, it started off there was more ownership, and now there's more people paying for access. My life's going to change an awful lot as I'm younger, so I'm not going to buy a home and stay with it. I'm going to rent to multiple places. I'm going to maybe try a couple of different cities. I'm going to change the shape and size of what my family unit looks like, and then I'm probably going to buy. I'm going to buy much later. I could argue there's other reasons for growing house prices, and that's in line with growing wages. But I do think a big portion of that is let me have access to things that I value now, and I'll worry about ownership later. And I think the same is true for cars. People want new cars every few years. Why am I owning it and then selling it? Just let me pay for access. Let me do leasing. Let me do PCP, etc. And I think that's just now happening at smaller and smaller levels. Happening with laptops, it's happening with phones. And all we're really doing is taking the consumer behaviour that there is clear evidence that this is a way that people prefer living their lives, and then just making it more accessible to the clothes you wear, the devices in your home, the toys you play with, the sports and hobbies which you engage with. It's just making that more accessible. It's sort of our most successful ones are like golf clubs, for example. How if you take up golf as a new hobby, like the equipment you start with and the equipment you have in like 3 years' time are vastly different. You work your way through. You go from sort of hobbyist to thinking you're a pro, and then I think it's kind of a peak if you're thinking you're wonderful, and then you realise how terrible you really are. And that equipment changes, and that brand loyalty changes a lot throughout those hobbies, for example. So it's just making your relationship with the things, the items in your life, match much more closely with like the realities of your life, your fluctuating appetites, ambitions, interests, realities. Those things. Life changes an awful lot, and it's really a case of making the items in your life match the reality of that kind of those changing lives that we all live.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for your invaluable insights. This must have been a relaxing conversation, as Major is asleep, I think, there at the side.
I think he's bored of hearing these talking points, to be honest.
No. Really, really useful and really interesting. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you the best of luck with all your future plans.
Thank you, sir.
Until the next time.